At 07:42 on the morning of March 6, 1944, above the grey frosted fields west of Magdeburg, the Mustang shudders. Thin winter light flashes across aluminum skin. Frost haze trails from wingtips. And inside, hands shake. Not from fear, but from cold and throttle pressure, bones grinding against vibration. Captain Samuel. Red Harper forces a breath through frozen oxygen gear. Blue lead, tally bandits, 9 o'clock high. His voice cracks through radio static like a snapping cable. 8 contrails swing in high and hard. BF-109Gs diving with sun behind them. Harper presses the throttle, the Merlin's supercharger howling like a wounded animal clawing for air. Speed climbs. Too fast for a climb, too late to run. Oil temp spikes. One decision. A radiator door clicks beneath him. A hiss. A rise in warmth. Through the stick. Subtle. Impossible. Alive. And in that heat. Thrust. A few pounds. A few miles per hour. Just enough to live. He doesn't know it yet, but a British engineer's forgotten paper, filed 9 years earlier, will decide who leaves this sky. The first 109 flashes past. Harper rolls, breath catching. Today, heat fights death. On January 15, 1944, at Leiston Airfield in Suffolk, wind cuts across the frozen dispersal pads like knives between rivet seams. Airmen stomp boots, cursing England's winter mud as they tug canvas covers from Mustang cowlings. Oil fumes rise like ghosts into morning air that tastes of metal and fuel. Red Harper stands beside his P-51B, serial number 42106987, tail code B6R. The maintenance chief, Staff Sergeant Eddie Morales, rubs numb fingers across the radiator intake under the belly. His breath makes small clouds in the cold. "You ever wonder, Cap," Morales mutters, "why we built the world's fastest radiator with wings?" Harper smirks. "I thought it was a fighter with a hot bath attached." Morales snorts, tapping the duct with a wrench that rings like a small bell. "This thing works like black magic. NAA calls it a heat exchanger. I call it a miracle with bolts. You open the door just right. She gives you free push." He pauses, looking up at Harper's skeptical face. "I know it sounds crazy, but the numbers don't lie." Harper doesn't fully buy it. Free thrust from a cooling system? Air heated to jet speed inside a duct? Sounds like a test pilot's myth, something they tell you in ground school to keep morale up. But he knows the truth that matters. Mustangs escort bombers deeper than anything America's flown. Deep into the Reich, where 8th Air Force B-17 crews pray they won't run out of range before they run out of enemies. Before the Mustang arrived in numbers, bomber losses exceeded 15% on deep penetration missions. With the P-51, that number dropped to under 7%. A technical sergeant from the 357th Fighter Group Command Shack runs over with a clipboard, boots splashing through frozen puddles. Colonel says wheels up in 2 hours. Berlin strike package. Weather holding. Morales exhales slowly, vapor hanging in front of his face. "Hell of a day to test your radiator faith." Harper glances at a small grease-stained note pinned inside the cockpit, written in Morales' blocky handwriting. "Keep it cool. Live longer." Someone has added underneath, "or warm enough to fly home." He pats the metal cowling. It's warm even in freezing air, heat bleeding from the last engine run-up. The aluminum feels alive under his palm. Some machines feel sentient before they ever move. The P-51 is one of them. Across the field, Merlin engines begin their warming cycle, a distant thrum that builds into synchronized thunder. Harper counts 12 Mustangs on the line, each one representing thousands of engineering hours, millions of dollars, and one pilot's life. Today won't be routine. Nowhere in Europe is safe anymore. The Luftwaffe is wounded but still dangerous, its pilots experienced and desperate. 4 years earlier and 5,000 miles west, in Inglewood, California, the future is being welded together. On September 4, 1940, Edgar Schmued stands over a blueprint table at North American Aviation, his German accent clipped but fierce as he argues with a circle of engineers under harsh fluorescent lights. "Speed is life, drag is death," he says, tapping the paper with a mechanical pencil. "We must treat every screw, every rivet, every surface like it plans to kill velocity." He indicates a schematic showing a sharp airfoil profile, buried cooling ducts, and a radiator positioned far aft under the fuselage. The design looks wrong to conventional eyes. Radiators belong in the nose, everyone knows that. But Schmued has calculated something different. A junior aerodynamicist named James Kindleberger flips open a dusty journal from the Royal Aeronautical Society, its pages yellowed and stiff. "Sir, I found this paper. Frederick Meredith, RAF Farnborough, published in 1935. He calculated that if radiator duct exit air is hotter than entry velocity, the acceleration may exceed inlet drag loss." He looks up, uncertain. "Could potentially produce thrust?" Silence settles over the drafting table. Schmued raises one eyebrow, his expression unreadable. "Radiator thrust? Maybe a few pounds of force," Kindleberger continues, gaining confidence. "But over a long mission profile, range gain could be 10 to 15 miles per hour at cruise power settings." Several engineers laugh. One shakes his head. "You can't get something from nothing." Schmued doesn't laugh. He circles the duct layout on the blueprint like a battlefield general marking enemy artillery positions. "We do not waste heat. We weaponize it." His pencil makes small, precise marks. "If Meredith's mathematics are sound, we gain free velocity. If they are wrong, we still have an efficient cooling system. Either way, we win." Over the following weeks, NTELE drafts trace curves that seem half bird, half bullet. The wing profile uses laminar flow theory, risky, largely untested in combat. Conditions promising lower drag, if manufactured to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch. The belly scoop that engineers argue is positioned backwards becomes the radiator intake, carefully shaped to manage airflow like a miniature wind tunnel. Schmued knows war is coming. He designs not for the next fiscal quarter, but for the next battle American pilots haven't yet flown. Battles over Berlin and Munich and Vienna, where range means survival. In a corner of his office, a pinned telegram reads, "U.S. Army Air Corps, request for proposal. New pursuit aircraft, maximum operational range, maximum airspeed. Delivery beginning 1942. No one at NAA has seen combat over France in 1940. But they all smell smoke across the Atlantic. The factory whistle blows. First shift ends. Second shift begins. In the darkness outside, welding sparks flash like distant anti-aircraft fire." On the morning of March 6, 1944, Harper sits in a cramped briefing hut at Leiston. A kerosene heater coughs in the corner, barely cutting the cold. Wet wool and cigarette smoke hang heavy in the air. 40 pilots crowd onto wooden benches, their faces showing exhaustion layered over youth. Colonel Donald Blakesley, legendary 8th Air Force fighter leader with 11 confirmed kills, slams a wooden pointer against a wall map of Germany. Target, Berlin, marshalling yards, and industrial district, B-17s from 3rd Bomb Division, approximately 270 heavies in 3 combat wings. Expected German fighter opposition, substantial. Fuel discipline is vital. You bring your Mustangs home with empty tanks, or you bring them home on fire. Those are your options. A nervous chuckle ripples through the room, more reflex than humour. Harper's pencil moves across his knee pad, recording essential data. Climb to 26,000 feet at rendezvous point escort rotation with 4th fighter, group ammunition, 270 rounds per gun. 50 caliber fuel, 184 gallons, internal, plus two 108-gallon drop tanks, combat radius, approximately 650 miles with reserves. A supply officer standing near the door mutters to another pilot, "Those paper tanks leak like hell. Lose 20 gallons before you even cross the channel." Harper shrugs without looking up. "Ugly gets us home. Pretty gets you a coffin with your name spelled right." Outside the briefing hut, Morales plants one hand against Harper's Mustang radiator intake, feeling vibration through skin and bone as another aircraft runs up its engine nearby. The duct opening measures 12 inches by 14 inches, carefully shaped with a diffuser that slows incoming air and a nozzle that accelerates it on exit. Physics and geometry working together. "Hold together, sweetheart," Morales whispers to the machine. Everyone in the briefing room knows the stakes without Blakesley saying them directly. In October 1943, bomber formations went to Schweinfurt without long-range fighter escort. 60 B-17s, 600 men, never came home. Loss rate exceeded 26%. After that, mission, deep penetration raids stopped for 2 months while the 8th Air Force regrouped and waited for fighters with range. Range wins wars. Range saves lives. Range is measured in gallons and miles and minutes, but felt in heartbeats and prayers. And today, a radiator system that shouldn't create thrust according to conventional wisdom will help determine whether 1,000 airmen see tomorrow. The final briefing slide appears on the projection screen. Expected Luftwaffe groups, JG-26, JG-2, JG-11, names that mean experienced killers. No one speaks. Blakesley taps the map one last time. Wheels up at 08:00, weather permitting, dismissed. At 08:10 on March 6th, the Leiston flight line becomes a symphony of violence and precision. Propeller arcs chop frost fog into swirling patterns. Ground crews pull wheel chocks and run clear. Harper's gloved fist slams the throttle forward. The Merlin coughs once, twice, then roars and stabilizes into a smooth thunder that vibrates through the airframe into his spine. "Blue Squadron, check in." Harper's voice cuts through radio static. Responses crackle back, each voice distinct. 2, up. 3, up. 4, oxygen system good. Ready. Wheels lift off mud-slicked runway. The Rolls-Royce Merlin V1653 engine delivers 1,380 horsepower at military power, turning the four-blade Hamilton Standard propeller at 3,000 RPM. England's hedgerows disappear under cloud layer at 4,000 feet. Inside Harper's oxygen mask, each breath feels rationed, precious. Frost creeps across the canopy edges despite cockpit heat. His radiator shutter indicator shows UTO position, the system adjusting coolant flow and exit door angle based on engine temperature. Morales' earlier words echo in memory. "Open it just right, she gives you free push." Harper nudges the control manually, just to feel the response. A faint rumble transmits through the airframe. The coolant temperature needle steadies at 105 degrees Celsius. The aircraft feels lighter somehow, eager, like a horse given its head. Fact or myth doesn't matter at this moment. The Mustang climbs at 3,200 feet per minute, angling toward 26,000 feet, where the bomber stream will need protection. Below, fishing boats off the Suffolk coast trace white scars across grey North Sea water. Ahead, through the canopy glass, Germany, enemy territory, flak towers and fighter bases, and 1,000 ways to die. Harper checks his mirror, counts 3 friendly fighters tucked into formation behind and above him. The formation is loose but disciplined, each pilot scanning assigned sectors for contrails or glints that mean enemy aircraft. At 15,000 feet, the drop tanks begin feeding fuel to the Merlin. Harper monitors the flow, fuel pressure steady, transfer pumps working, both tanks drawing evenly. These ugly external tanks, built with glue and paper and thin aluminum, extend his combat radius by 300 miles. Without them, Berlin would be unreachable. With them, he can escort the bombers all the way to the target and back again. The channel disappears behind. Holland's flat fields appear below, frozen canals reflecting white sky. A formation of B-17G flying fortresses appears ahead at 24,000 feet, deep, heavy, vulnerable. Each bomber carries 10 men and 4 tons of bombs, flying fortresses that bleed like men when steel finds them. Over the North Sea at 20,000 feet, the bomber formation assembles into combat pattern. The B-17s form 3 staggered boxes: high squadron, lead squadron, low squadron, creating overlapping fields of defensive fire. Frost sparkles across plexiglass gun turrets like scattered diamonds. Harper can imagine the sound of 50 caliber machine guns test firing inside those aircraft, the smell of gun oil and aluminum and fear. Harper tucks his flight into high cover position, 3,000 feet above the bombers and slightly ahead. Keep your eyes scanning. Berlin's not giving out welcome baskets. Technical details hum in motion around him. Intercooler temperature gauge reads 45 degrees Celsius. Manifold pressure steady at 46 inches. Supercharger operating in low blower mode. Radiator exit door positioned approximately 40% open. Every system working in harmony, converting fuel and air and heat into forward motion. Radio burst from another Mustang. Blue leader, contrails at 130 high, Angels 28. Harper's head snaps right. High above, thin white lines scratch across blue-black sky. Too far to identify yet. Could be friendly P-47s returning from a sweep. Could be Luftwaffe fighters climbing to intercept altitude. Hold position, Harper orders. Stay with the heavies. This is the fundamental discipline that separates escort fighters from glory hunters. Escorts don't chase individual targets or seek personal victory tallies. They deny death to the bombers, even when that means ignoring tempting targets, even when every instinct screams to attack. In the lead, B-17 below, tail number 42, 31333. Memphis Belle, on her 22nd mission, a waist gunner in sheepskin jacket and fleece-lined boots watches the Mustangs through his plexiglass window. He can see the distinctive profile, low fuselage scoop, bubble canopy, graceful wings, guardian angels painted olive drab and neutral grey. He taps the glass with one gloved finger, speaking to no one and everyone. Those boys better stick. He has no idea that one of those pilots is trusting an aerodynamic equation scribbled in a British laboratory before the war, when the world was different and younger and believed in paper promises. The contrails above resolve into a formation of American P-47 Thunderbolts, turning west after an escort rotation. Harper exhales slowly, fog condensing inside his mask. On the eastern horizon, a faint darkening, not cloud, not weather. Flak towers around Berlin are waking up, and the city knows the bombers are coming. Berlin approaches through broken cloud at 13:45 local time. Flak begins blossoming black across the horizon, like dead flowers opening in hellish garden. German 80-82 and 105mm anti-aircraft batteries fire in coordinated patterns, creating boxes of fragmented steel through which bombers must fly. B-17s tighten formation. Vapor trails rip and distort in shockwaves from nearby bursts. Harper tastes copper in his mouth, metal and adrenaline and fear, the flavor of combat that no training can prepare you for. His heart rate climbs despite breathing discipline. Blue flight, stay with the heavies. Green flight will sweep ahead for fighter screens. A fuel gauge ticks steadily downward. The drop tanks wobble slightly under wing hard points, sloshing with remaining fuel that sounds like water in a canteen. One tank leaks a thin spray that freezes instantly in -40-degree air, creating a glittering trail of ice crystals behind him like fairy dust in a nightmare. Then, voices exploding across the radio. "Bandits! 6 high! Fokker wolves! Coming down!" Few 190A fighters dive from 28,000 feet, their yellow-painted spinner noses bright against dark sky, their 20mm cannons already flashing. A B-17 in the low squadron takes hits. Number 3 engine bursts into orange flame, oil spray coating the wing black. The bomber holds formation for 30 seconds, then spirals left, losing altitude, leaving behind smoke trail and tiny dots that become parachutes. Harper pivots hard, Mustangs rolling like knives toward the attacking fighters. His Radiator automatic door adjusts in response to increased throttle demand. Engine temperature spikes momentarily, then stabilizes. The control system balances cooling needs against aerodynamic efficiency, managing hundreds of variables simultaneously through mechanical linkages and thermostatic controls. His aircraft feels poised, balanced, ready. This is where Edgar Schmued's obsessive attention to drag reduction becomes survival. This is where Frederick Meredith's theoretical paper transforms into life or death. A FW-190 flashes past, too fast to track. Another bomber takes hits. Fuselage punctures appear like someone punching holes in tin. Neat and terrible. Return fire from bomber gunners creates tracers arcing in all directions. A deadly light show at 25,000 feet. Harper's gun camera clicks on automatically when he presses the trigger safety forward. Whatever happens next, film will record it. History begins recording in black and white frames, 24 per second. Harper yanks the control stick hard left and back. G-forces crush his ribs against harness straps. Breath becomes labor. Vision tunnels at the edges. A FW-190 fills his gun sight reticle. Wings broad and deadly, radial engine cowling massive compared to the Mustang's streamlined nose. He squeezes both triggers. 6 Browning M2 machine guns bark flame from the wings. High-1-200 rounds per minute, combined fire rate. Tracers arc across empty air, phosphorus burning white-green. Metal tears audibly even over engine noise. The FW-190's right wing root erupts in debris, pieces of aileron and skin tumbling away in the slipstream. The German aircraft snaps inverted. A figure tumbles clear, parachute streaming. But a Bf-109G dives onto Harper's tail from his blind spot, cannon rounds cracking past the canopy, close enough to feel pressure waves. One round punctures the left horizontal stabilizer, leaving a hole the size of a dinner plate. Harper's hand slams the radiator control to full open position. A move pilot manual's warn against except in extreme cooling emergencies. Engine coolant temperature drops as flow increases. Drag should increase from the wide open exit door. Speed should bleed away. Instead, something else happens. Heat rushes through the radiator core, transferring from 120-degree coolant to incoming air. That air, compressed and heated, expands violently inside the carefully shaped duct. Velocity increases. Static pressure converts to dynamic pressure. The exit nozzle accelerates the flow further, ejecting air at higher speed than it entered. His Mustang surges forward, a kick like invisible hands, shoving from behind. Not imagination, real thrust, perhaps 5 pounds of force, enough to break the enemy's firing solution. He brakes vertically, climbing at full power. The Bf-109 overshoots, its pilot unable to match the acceleration. Harper inhales sharply, voice breaking protocol. Holy! He banks hard right, positioning behind the 109 now below him. His gunsight pipper settles on the enemy canopy. He fires, tracers stitch a line from tail to cockpit. The canopy glass explodes crimson and the fighter tumbles away, spinning, Behind him in the bomber stream, a desperate radio call. Tail section hit, crew bailing, 3 shoots, 4. War doesn't wait for wonder or awe. It continues grinding forward. Harper looks at his coolant temperature gauge, still within safe parameters. Something impossible just saved his life, and there's no time to think about it. At 14:20, bomb bay doors close far below. B-17s release their loads, 260-pound general-purpose bombs and 500-pound high-explosive bombs, tumbling away toward Berlin marshalling yards and industrial facilities. Smoke rises in columns from the city, black and grey against white snow. The bomber formation begins its turn west, a ponderous banking movement of 270 heavy aircraft. Damaged bombers, some with engines out, some with hydraulic failures, some with wounded crew, straggle at the formation edges like wounded animals falling behind the herd. Harper scans his fuel gauges. Main tank shows 45 gallons remaining. Drop tanks empty and jettisoned 15 minutes ago. Enough fuel if winds stay favourable, and if the Merlin continues running smoothly, and if no diversions become necessary. A lot of ifs. Mustangs fan out in escort pattern like tired wolves guarding a scarred herd. Every pilot watches fuel, watches sky, watches for the next threat. On the bomber command frequency, a clipped British voice from 8th Air Force headquarters. Quote, "Bomber command notes lower loss rates today. Fighter escort assessed as effective." No cheer goes up, no celebration, just breath condensing inside oxygen masks, just hands gripping control sticks, just eyes scanning for the next attack. Harper's hand rests on the radiator control lever. A kind of mechanical religion has formed inside him over this mission, built from experience and survival. Heat isn't the enemy. It's an ally when properly managed. The engineers who designed this system understood something profound about thermodynamics and thrust and survival. He whispers, voice too quiet for the radio to transmit, "Thanks, whoever figured this thing out." Far across the North Sea and the Atlantic Ocean, at North American Aviation in Inglewood, California, no one can hear him. Edgar Schmued is already working on the P-51D model with improved canopy and armament. The assembly line runs 3 shifts, producing 15 fighters per day. No one there will ever know that their calculations just kept a pilot alive over Germany. A single German straggler, a damaged Bf-109 with smoking engine, attempts one last pass at a wounded B-17. 3 Mustangs converge on it simultaneously. Gun cameras record its destruction in overlapping film frames. No glory, just mathematics, just inevitability. The bomber stream continues west, leaving Berlin burning behind them. At 14:52, the mission returns to the moment where it began. Bf-109Gs from JG-11 dive out of sun glare, 8 fighters attacking from 28,000 feet. Harper flinches, not from fear, but from reflex, the animal brain reacting faster than thought. His formation scatters upward and outward like startled birds, each pilot executing defensive brakes. Harper toggles the radiator control to quarter-open position and slams the throttle fully forward to 67 inches of manifold pressure, war emergency power that risks engine damage if sustained too long. That subtle warm thrust returns through the airframe, a feeling more than a measurement. He climbs when logic suggests diving for speed and safety. Below and behind, a B-24 Liberator limps alone at wrong altitude, one engine trailing black smoke, unable to keep pace with the main formation. A shark cruising beneath wounded prey. A Bf-109 lines up on the bomber's tail, positioning for the killing burst. Harper rolls inverted and dives, radiator door audibly shifting through mechanical linkages as the control system responds to changing conditions. Cold air outside, furnace temperatures in the engine compartment, physics working in real time. Speed builds beyond 400 miles per hour. The airframe shakes, skin panels drumming. Wind roar becomes a scream. His gun sight reticle tracks the German fighter. He fires from 400 yards, closing fast. 50 caliber rounds rake the 109's wing root and fuselage. Aluminum's skin peels away in strips. The fighter's coolant system ruptures, white vapor streaming. Fire blooms orange behind the cockpit. Harper pulls back hard on the stick, straining against G-forces that turn blood to lead in his veins. Vision greys at the edges. Muscles in his neck feel like cables about to snap. God, keep her cool. The radiator temperature gauge creeps toward the red line but holds. Coolant temperature hits 125 degrees Celsius, just below the danger threshold. Meredith's equations, Schmued's ductwork, Rolls-Royce engineering, all of it working together to keep the Merlin from destroying itself. The German fighter tumbles away, trailing smoke and pieces. The B-24 continues flying west, crew saved by split-second physics they'll never know about. Harper's wingman breaks radio silence with panic in his voice. Blue lead, fuel critically low, I'm showing 15 gallons. The math is simple and terrible. 15 gallons means perhaps 20 minutes of flight time. The English coast is 30 minutes away. Approaching the North Sea at 15:30, fuel desperation transforms every pilot into an accountant of survival. The P-51 Mustang was born from numbers, gallons and miles and pounds of thrust, BTU energy calculations and laminar flow equations and drop tank capacity measurements. Every fraction of drag coefficient, every square inch of wing surface, every gallon capacity decision, every sealed seam in those paper drop tanks, all of it decides fate now. Harper checks his gauge. Main tank shows 18 gallons remaining. Minutes, not hours. The radiator door shifts to a smaller opening angle, reducing cooling drag, retaining more heat, allowing the engine to extract maximum power from minimum fuel flow. 20 miles ahead, a Mustang glides with propeller windmilling uselessly. Fuel exhausted, engine silent. The aircraft becomes an unpowered glider with a 14.1 glide ratio, descending approximately 500 feet per minute. Good luck, brother, a voice crackles across the radio frequency. Nothing else to say. Nothing else to do? The pilot bails out at 8,000 feet, parachute blossoming white against grey sky. Cold North Sea water waits below, 50-degree temperature that causes hypothermia in 15 minutes. Air-sea rescue launches will search, but finding one man in ocean is nearly impossible. The pilot's odds are poor. Harper clenches his teeth against the cold and exhaustion. I didn't come this far to swim home. Technical truth hums in the machinery around him. The Mustang's laminar flow wing minimizes drag at cruise speeds. The carefully shaped radiator duct recovers energy that would otherwise be lost to cooling requirements. The Merlin engine operates with precisely calibrated fuel-air mixture at altitude. Survival lives in decimal points and fractional percentages. The bomber stream ahead has scattered, each damaged aircraft seeking the shortest route to friendly territory, healthy bombers maintaining formation discipline. Several B-17s trail smoke. One has 2 engines shut down, descending slowly on remaining power. Harper monitors his instruments with the focus of a surgeon. Coolant temperature optimal, oil pressure steady, fuel flow minimized to lean cruise mixture, every system balanced for maximum range. The English coastline appears through haze ahead, impossibly far, impossibly faint. The white cliffs of Dover are theoretical at this distance, more hope than geography. His fuel gauge shows 12 gallons, perhaps 15 minutes of engine operation remaining, perhaps less if he encounters headwinds. The mathematics are unforgiving. Over the North Sea at 1548, the Mustang shivers in turbulent air. The propeller governor hunts, RPM fluctuating as fuel pressure drops. Fuel fumes, thin as breath, vapor where liquid should be. Harper opens the radiator slightly, not for cooling now, but for managing heat distribution, extracting every possible ounce of aerodynamic advantage from the system. No music plays in his headset, just wind moaning against the canopy frame, a lonely sound at 12,000 feet above cold water. Leiston Tower crackles through static, weak and distant. Blue lead, report fuel status. He keys the microphone with effort, his hand numb. Running on hope and hot air, maybe 10 minutes to coast. The Mustang glides more than flies now, descending at 200 feet per minute to stretch range, propeller pulled back to course pitch for efficiency. That radiator duct, designed primarily to cool a 1,400 horsepower engine running at combat power, now feeds back precious thrust from heated air, perhaps 2 or 3 pounds of force, nothing and everything. At 1556 the engine coughs, once, twice, cylinder misfires as fuel flow becomes erratic. Harper's stomach drops. Not yet. Not this close. The English coastline solidifies ahead. Real land, real earth, real hope. 5 miles away. Perhaps 3 minutes at current speed and descent rate. The Merlin coughs again, longer this time. Power drops. Propeller slows. The aircraft settles into steady descent, trading altitude for distance, physics working with and against him simultaneously. At 3,000 feet above the channel, Leiston Airfield appears through coastal haze. The runway, just a concrete strip, and hope waits like salvation. Harper sets up for landing approach, gear down, flaps to landing position. The hydraulic systems work on residual pressure, mechanical backups engaging. The Mustang descends through 1,000 feet, through 500 feet, over the airfield boundary fence at 110 miles per hour. Wheels kiss earth with a chirp of rubber on concrete. The Mustang rolls, engine giving its last turning effort, coasting now, slowing, easing to a stop 200 yards from the runway end. The Merlin quits like a heart giving out after holding too long. Silence replaces thunder. Harper sits in the cockpit, hands shaking, breath ragged inside his oxygen mask. Ground crews sprint toward him. Morales arrives first, climbing onto the wing, face pale. I told you, black magic. Harper doesn't laugh, he just touches the hot metal cowling beside his seat. It's warm, vibrant, alive. In the Leiston maintenance hangar that night, Morales removes the radiator access panel with careful hands. Steam rises from the cooling system, metal still hot hours after shutdown. Mechanics work by electric light and lantern glow, their movements gentle as doctors performing surgery. They treat the machine not like steel and aluminum, but like a combat veteran who earned rest. Nearby at a wooden table, Harper signs the mission after-action report form with a hand that still trembles. His handwriting looks ragged, unsteady. The form asks for technical observations. He writes, "Radiator system performance exceeded expectations under combat conditions. Fuel consumption consistent with specifications. Aircraft handling excellent throughout engagement. Clinical language for a day when heat and air and mathematics kept him alive. Mission intelligence summary, classified and filed. 3rd Bomb Division conducted raid on Berlin marshalling yards March 6, 1944. 270 B-17s dispatched, 247 bombers reached target, 16 aircraft lost to enemy action and mechanical failure, loss rate 5.9%, significantly below previous deep penetration mission averages. Fighter escort assessed as decisive factor in reduced losses. Luftwaffe opposition encountered but failed to achieve formation disruption. Numbers in a file, a universe of meaning to the men whose bunks remained occupied that night. Harper sips burnt coffee from a tin cup, staring across the hangar at his Mustang. Someone has chalked a small kill marking on the fuselage below the canopy. 2 German fighter silhouettes for today's victories. Numbers he didn't count during the fighting. "I swear she pushed herself today," he says quietly to Morales, who stands nearby with a wrench in one hand. Morales shrugs, wiping grease from his fingers with a rag. "Maybe that British guy knew something." Harper blinks. "British guy?" "Yeah, Meredith, RAF engineer at Farnborough. Wrote a paper about radiator thermodynamics back in '35. Nobody paid attention until Schmued at North American dug it up. Radiator that fights back instead of just bleeding drag. The ducts are shaped to accelerate exit flow faster than entry velocity. Net thrust if the heat transfer is efficient enough." Harper laughs once, more breath than sound. "To think, we outran death today with warmed air and mathematics." Morales hangs a maintenance tag on the radiator panel. "Do not remove, duct seals, critical." Truth lives in small warnings written by tired hands. The war will end in 14 months. Young pilots will age into old men. Factories will quiet. Assembly lines stopping their endless rhythm. Some Mustangs will race at Reno in peacetime. Others will sit in museums with placards explaining laminar flow wings and Meredith effect thrust recovery systems. Visitors will read names etched on bronze plates. Edgar Schmued, chief designer. Frederick William Meredith, aerodynamicist. James H. Kindleberger, president of North American Aviation. And many they will never know. Armourers who loaded ammunition belts in freezing darkness, riveters who sealed fuel tank seams with their lives, depending on their accuracy, mechanics with grease-blackened fingernails who torqued bolts to exact specifications that held gravity away. Pilots will remember sound first when asked about the Mustang. The Merlin's rising hum at startup, then roar at takeoff power, then the sustained thunder of combat thrust. After sound, heat. The strange comfort of warmth bleeding through metal into cold hands at altitude, the glow of instruments, the radiant temperature that meant systems still functioned when everything else seemed frozen and dead. And somewhere in a climate-controlled archive at the Royal Aeronautical Society in London lies the paper, once ignored, now studied by every aeronautical engineering student. Cooling of aircraft engines with special reference to ethylene glycol radiators enclosed in ducts. F.W. Meredith, Reports and Memoranda, number 1683, published December 1935. 17 pages of mathematics and wind tunnel data. Equations describing heat transfer, coefficients and boundary layer flow and duct pressure recovery. A theoretical prediction that properly designed radiator systems could recover most of their cooling drag and under optimal conditions produce net positive thrust. A theory that engineers transformed into sheet metal and ducting. An equation that became a machine that brought men home. On a spring day in 1947, Harper stands beside his old Mustang at an air show in California. The aircraft has been restored, polished to mirror brightness, placed on display for crowds who want to see what won the war. Children point at the propeller, adults read the information card. P-51 Mustang, top speed 437 mph, range 1,650 miles, ceiling 41,900 feet. Harper places his palm against the radiator intake under the belly. The metal is cool now, silent, but he can still feel memory of heat in his hand. He speaks quietly, words meant only for the machine. "You didn't fly on luck, you flew on physics." And in that simple truth lies the entire war's lesson, the reason 15,586 Mustangs were built, the reason bomber crews made it home from Berlin and Munich and Vienna, the reason the strategic bombing campaign succeeded when it might have failed. Courage matters, will matters, bravery matters, but courage combined with engineering changes history. A young engineering student approaches with a notebook, eager, questions about laminar flow and radiator thrust. Harper smiles and begins explaining how heat becomes thrust, how air pressure converts to forward motion, how Frederick Meredith's forgotten paper saved thousands of lives. The student writes furiously, trying to capture every technical detail. Harper doesn't tell him the real secret, that somewhere over Germany in 1944, when fuel ran low and enemies surrounded him and death seemed certain, a few pounds of thrust from heated air, invisible, improbable, real, made the difference between a grave and a life. Some forces are too small to see but large enough to matter. In the quiet after victory, archives reveal this truth. The smallest forces, heat, pressure, innovation, attention to decimal points, decide the largest destinies, and somewhere in the sky above us, the ghosts of young pilots still fly, riding on wings shaped by equations they never learned, saved by thrust they never saw, kept alive by engineers they never met. The mathematics endure, the mission reports fade, the machines rest silent. But the heat remains, in memory, in archives, in the warm metal of a radiator that once fought death with physics.